What's Islam? That's a question many people are asking today. And nearly Islam is the topic of many discussions. Yet very often people don't really have the essence of the meaning. Even Muslims themselves are not really sure how to translate it. The word Islam is the only word not translated from the Quran when they bring it to the English language. And there's a reason for that. When we go to the Arabic dictionary, we find that it takes a series of words to represent the concept of what aslama means. Aslama is the verb for the noun Islam. It carries a meaning of surrender, submission, obedience, sincerity, and peace. We understand about surrender, to give in, submit, and that's to go along with something, to obey the commandments, and then to be sincere. Now we could stop right there for a moment and think about it. If it requires sincerity, then there's no possible way that it can be forced on anyone. Because if anyone was forced to do anything, then it would no longer be sincerity. Thus, we realize the concept of Islam being spread by a sword or any type of force is impossible, because Islam requires sincerity. Finally, the word peace. This is a peace that the person has in their heart after they have done the other four, meaning that they have surrendered, submitted in obedience and sincerity, and now they're going to be in peace with whatever transpires or comes out of it. There's another word related to it, Muslim. For you and I, we might not think the word Muslim would be related to Islam, but that's because in Arabic you use a prefix, mu, before a verb to denote the one performing the action, whereas in English we use the letters er, as a suffix at the end of the word to represent the one who does the action. Like walk, talk, think, And then in Arabic you put mu ahead of it. Adhan, mu'adhan, one who calls the prayer. Salli, musalli, the one who prays. Safar, musafir, the one who travels. This helps us to understand that word, Islam. But what does Islam imply? We talked about the meaning, the etymology of the word, but what does it really imply, and what is it about? What does Islam have to do with Allah? Is Allah God? Is there a purpose behind all of this? Who is this God? Who's the Ilah? And in fact, in Islam, the most important subject is Allah. Allah does not exactly translate into the word God. And that's because the word God in English only has one form, God. Whereas in Arabic, the word Allah comes from Ilah. And Ilah is anything worshipped. Anything can be a god, a rock, a stick, a stone, a bone, things made with the hand, things that you could put out on a shelf or carry along with you and worship. Could be the stars, the moon, the universe. Whatever a person worships, that's their Ilah. Even their position in life, who they are, their degrees, their job, their wealth, their position as a human being. All of these things are ilaha, gods. But in English, you don't have a proper noun for the one and only God. So what they do is take the word God and make a big G out of it and say this is the proper noun. Whereas in Arabic, you can take ilah and then you have Allah, and it doesn't just mean the God, because that would be al-ilah. But Allah is the actual name of the one and only God. And you don't have to worry about capital letters in Arabic because there aren't any. You can hear it clearly. Allah, the one and only to be worshipped. Now, is this the God of the Arabs as Muslims? Yes. What about Arab Christians? Did you know there are Arab Christians, Arab Jews? They use the exact same word. In fact, In the Arabic Bible, which by the way is much older than the English Bible, you find the word Allah on page 1 of Genesis 17 times. That's right. And in the New Testament, you will find it very easily in almost any hotel or motel you go to, because when you pull open the little drawer by the bed, you'll notice that there's a book in there, the Bible. You turn a few pages, you'll see examples of the translations of the Bible into different languages. And the second language is Arabic. And the phrase is taken from John 3:16, for God so loved the world. And the word for God there is used is Allah. Now, what about the belief in Muhammad? Is that something that is similar to Christianity or Judaism? Well, for Christians who believe in Abraham, as Jews believe in Abraham as being the first or the progenitor of this monotheistic belief, the belief in one God, then the answer would be yes, because this is what Muhammad taught. In fact, many people don't know this, but Muhammad, peace be upon him, he is a direct descendant from Abraham. Yes, by the way of his son Ishmael. So Ishmael is well known to be the father of many of the Arabs today, and it is from him, through Abraham, Ishmael, that we find others who come all the way down to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. What about the other prophets that came by way of Isaac, from the other branch of Abraham? Well, we know Moses, don't we? And David and Solomon, and of course Jesus. And we say peace be upon them all. This is very important for Muslims to always say that. Peace be upon them. What was it that Abraham, Moses, David, Solomon, and Jesus had in common with Muhammad? Peace be upon all of them. Do you know what it was? It was the message that they brought to their people. Abraham taught the people to worship God directly and not be involved in false worship or pagan worship. Moses, my gosh, that's very clear, isn't it? When we look to the 10 Commandments, we find immediately the very first commandment is that you shall not have any other worship except for the one God. Thou shalt not have any other gods beside me, is the way God ordered Moses to write it down, isn't it? And David, with his Psalms, and Solomon, of course they were on the exact same thinking. Their beliefs were not just similar, they were identical. And then Jesus, peace be upon him. Many people will tell you that Jesus says this or he said that, but when we look to the Bible, you know what we find? We find that it wasn't Jesus who had these different opinions and ideas, it was actually Paul. The quotes from Jesus in the gospel are so identical to the prophets before, you can't help but notice it. For instance, in Matthew 5:17, when Jesus says, think not that I came to destroy the law and the prophets. I came not to destroy, but to fulfill. And not until all things are accomplished shall a single dot or jot or iota or tittle be in any wise lessened. So we see right away that he was saying, I'm holding up the Torah, the law from before. Then when we look further into the book of Mark, we see what is the greatest of all commandments. That's in 12:29, the book of Mark. And look what it says. When somebody was asking him, what's the greatest commandment? According to the English translation I have, it said that Jesus responded, it is to know, O Israel, the Lord your God is one Lord, and you have to love him with all your heart and your mind and your strength. So, obviously we know now that this message was very important, worshiping God alone without partners. And that's exactly what Muhammad, peace be upon him, was trying to do with his people at his time in Mecca, because they had strayed far away from their great ancestor Abraham. They still performed some of the rituals, but without the proper belief. They still made a circumambulation around the very place that Abraham had built, along with his son Ismail, or Ishmael in English. And do you know, And this is an amazing thing when you think about it. These people were actually thinking they were doing exactly the same as their ancestors, but their ancestors had strayed so far away that all they had was the physical representation without any of the proper beliefs. Not in their worship, and certainly not the way they treated each other. These people had become alcoholics, they had become womanizers, they had become very bad in their business acumen. They were bad. We'll leave it at that. Because we want to come to something next in our subject about what's Islam. What about this book called the Quran? What is that all about? In the very beginning of the Quran itself, it demands that the believers who believe in the Quran must also believe in the previous revelation, to believe in what is sent to Muhammad, peace be upon him, and what was sent before. And then the Quran goes on to tell us about the Torah, the Zabur, and the Injil. Torah is the law or the Old Testament. The Zabur, this is the Psalms. You know about the Psalms. And the Injil, this means the Gospel, the New Testament. So whoever would not believe that God was the originator of those, that God is the one who sent those down, if they wouldn't believe that, then their belief in the Quran by itself is not enough, because the Quran says that, to believe in what was sent down before. And what does Quran exactly mean in simple English? Well, it doesn't mean book. The word Bible literally means book, biblios, from Greek. But the word Quran is Arabic, and it means recitation, that which is being recited. And that is how the Quran comes to us today. Because did you know that the Prophet Muhammad, he used to recite it just as he heard it. He heard it from the angel Gabriel, the way that it was to be recited to him, and that he was to pass it on. Now I'm going to take a little break right here, and we're going to come right back and pick up where we left off, talking about these books. Stay right there. We'll be right back.